Hello, everyone. My name is Arnolfo Padilla, and I'm going to be talking about Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost. I'm going to be talking about what I like, what I didn't like, and just like an overall summary about this book. So, this book mainly focuses about the ruler of the European country Belgium, which is King Leopold. And it pretty much starts off by saying that, like, after the discovery of the New World, a lot of European countries became very wealthy. And this is, of course, because discovering a lot of land and, like taking that land and, kind of like expanding from there. And at the time, actually, Belgium was a very new country, and therefore it lagged behind its rivals for imperial power. And they didn't really have the resources to go to the new world and like get rich from that. Which is why King Leopold II, who we're going to be talking about a lot throughout this presentation, decided to colonize a part of Central Africa, which is the Congo. And Central Africa was actually not well known by European geographers, which you know was a big deal. Which of course makes it a big deal because King Leopold is has his eyes on Central Africa. So King Leopold II was a very intelligent but yet ruthless person. He wasn't afraid to kill for the sake of expanding Belgium's rule. He was just looking for that power. He was just very much he was a very ruthless person. He aspired to rule the land around the Congo River as a source of revenue, and not only as a source of revenue, but also because his father, King Leopold I, that was like actually what he wanted. He wanted to expand Belgium rule to the Congo as a source of revenue, and King Leopold II actually presented himself as a philanthropist who wanted to expand Christianity to the Congo. That's what he would tell everyone around him, but like really instead he had more nefarious plans like behind that. And after getting the land, as I said, like these are the nefarious plans, he ordered his administration to enslave all the Congolese people as ivory hunters and rubber harvests. So you can see just how ruthless this man is. King Leopold II was actually he's actually 5 years older than Belgium. So like Belgium was created, and then King Leopold was born 5 years after that, which is kind of funny, just seeing how new Belgium was at the time. So the way he acquired the land is actually by a man called Henry Morton Stanley, which was actually he was actually one of the most famous explorers of the 19th century. And because of this, he actually became the first European to sail across the Congo River. He was the first person to sail, you know, down the Congo River, as I said. And he worked for Leopold for 5 years by developing the Congo. And another big factor of how he acquired the land is actually the force publique. Not really how he acquired the land, but also like how he maintained that land, how he maintained power in the Congo. The force publique, which are pretty much just African mercenaries that over time grew into an army. Like in I think like the book said there was like 20,000 at one point, so it was just a huge army. So how King Leopold got recognition? Um, the United States actually formally recognized the land as Leopold's, and they King Leopold actually relied heavily on two people from the U.S., which was Henry Shelton Stanford, who was the former ambassador from America to Belgium, and is actually a white supremacist, and Senator John Tyler Morgan, who urged the government to recognize Belgium's presence in the Congo. And a little fun fact, actually, Senator John Tyler Morgan served for the Confederate Army during the Civil War, which I guess is not too much of a fun fact, but it is a fact nonetheless. So let's talk about the slave labor. Leopold expanded his land and enslaved African people, as I mentioned before, and they were forced to be ivory hunters, porters, and rubber harvesters. Sorry, and anyone who tried to uprise or rebel got brutally murdered by the force publique, as I said. There were many organized rebellions, but due to the technology that the force publique had, people who participated in them got killed almost instantly because of course like the Congolese people didn't have the greatest technology, and they're always like, no matter what, they're going against like European, like, technology, which is way more advanced than anything the Congolese had at the time. So of course they got killed instantly because of this. All right. So the book talks a lot about this man called Edmund Dean Morel, who the book describes him as a very regular person. He was very much your average Joe at the time. He was an employee of a Liverpool shipping line, and he noticed that there was no trade going on in the Congo at all. Just one day when he was working, um, because the Congo was colonized by Belgium, as I said, and a big like this is in the introduction, and this is sorry, a quote from the introduction, and it says as Moreau watches these riches streaming to Europe with almost no goods being sent to Africa to pay for them, he realizes that there can be only one explanation for their source: slave labor. He knew right away that there was slave labor going on in the Congo, and of course, this is because there was a lot of cargo being sent outside of the Congo, but not a lot of cargo being sent to the Congo, which straight up just means there's slave labor going on. And because of this, he started the first human rights movement of the 20th century against King Leopold II's inhumane acts. So, Moro actually founded a newspaper exploiting Leopold's cruelty in the Congo, and it actually gained a lot of recognition because he teamed up with a lot of people who were like, behind the same cause. And one of these people was actually Roger Casman, who was a diplomat and an Irish nationalist, and actually died for being a nationalist. And there's a very famous newspaper of Roger Casement's where it says, "I would die for my country," and he was a very nationalist person in Ireland. And in 1905, Morrill and Casement caused an international outcry because of the inhumane acts that were happening in the Congo. And this actually, in fact, led to Belgium over time announcing a human rights reform in the Congo. But this reform really didn't mean much, like it was more of a public thing. So like people got behind, like them telling them like what to do. And although they did do a lot for the human rights reforms, they didn't really solve the Western imperialism problem. And the Belgium administration still used a lot of forced labor even after all of this. So like they really didn't care that there was a human rights reform in the Congo. So the imperialistic legacy actually still continues today in the Congo. There's still a lot of goods being sent from the Congo to the Western world. And even after Leopold's death in the 20th century, the Congolese were met with a lot of ruthless labor under the rule of Joseph Mobutu, which is still yet another ruthless like man who cared a lot about like the goods that were being sent from there. And even today, there's still billions of dollars worth of goods in the Congo being sent into the Western business. So, my thoughts of this book. I thought it was actually not bad at all. It was very interesting at times, actually. And a lot of the characters seem very otherworldly, like straight out of a movie. I would have never thought someone like Moro like was actually real, just a regular Joe who, happened to see something that he didn't really like and therefore did something about it. That's just straight up something like out of like an origin like superhero movie, like him acting up against what he sees as wrong. Even though Moro was still like he still thought that um European imperialism was not a bad thing. He still like thought slave labor was a bad thing, so like very like gray people in the book, but still like very interesting. And the book still also goes into great detail. You can tell the author was very passionate about the subject matter. Even in the introduction, like the way he found out about like the Congo and everything, and the way he started searching and like like looking up all of this, like it's very like he's very passionate about it, and that really shows off like in the book. But also a lot of the bad is also very difficult to follow at times, and a lot to remember, a lot of names to remember. Like there was a lot of people who was helping Moro, a lot of people like around Leopold, and yeah, some things that shocked me: how inhumane people at power can be. And I'm specifically talking about King Leopold, and also the man who like seized the Congo often bragged about all the people they killed. So like these are bad people who like don't really are very inhumane. As I said, I've been using the word inhumane like throughout the presentation because like very because they're just bad acts. And also like a big thing that actually kind of shocked me was that King Leopold ruled the Congo, and yet he never set foot there. He was always like hanging out in Belgium, and he never set foot in the Congo, which like shows how this actually shows just how modern this is. The fact that like he can literally rule a whole part of Africa without even setting foot there, and just like um putting people there to help him out with that. And this is yet another quote from the book, and it says it was the first major international atrocity scandal in the age of the telegraph and the camera. So this was a very modern thing that happened. This was just in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Like this is not too long ago. And also the fact that like there was Holocaust levels of death that were happening in the Congo, like because of this reason, because of enslavement, a lot of diseases coming their way, a lot of people trying to run away but dying instantly. There was just a lot of deaths going on, and the fact that not many people know about this like just shocks me because it's Holocaust levels of death. Like a lot of inhumane acts going on here. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching.